his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. The Lord bless you and keep you. Make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace.
Hi. Yeah, you gotta draw a picture of me playing the drums.
Amen.
I will be.
Amen.
Playing a drum.
Lord bless you and keep you. Make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. As we receive, we agree. Amen. His favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. May his favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. May his favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. May his favor be upon you and
Sunday. Only kidding. I always loved the drums, and it's been a long time since I've actually been up in front, so you are a good-looking bunch of people, as Luke always says. Well, today is Mission Sunday, and we're going to be talking about two different missions that the Whitestone family supports. The first half of it will be about Malawi, and some of you are quite familiar with it. Others that are new to the church probably saying where, why, how Malawi, and we'll cover that in a little bit. And so my wife is going to come up here in a second and kind of lay the foundation, where it came from, what happened over there. Brian Granger then will come up because he kind of spearheads the youth ministry over there. And then I'll finish up talking about THM in itself, which is Timothy Harvest Ministries, which you see up there, and what's been going on. And all I can tell you is when I got the pictures and saw what's been going on over these last 3 years, because we haven't been there that long, it blew me away. It is amazing what they're doing over there, and all that because we are in partnership with them. So with that, I'm going to let my wife Diane come up and give you a bit of the history.
Moni Muli Bwanji. That means hello, how are you in Chichewa? Have you ever been asked to go someplace in the world that you've never even heard of? For me, years ago, that was the country of Malawi in Africa. Never had ever heard of it in my life. And maybe you haven't either if you've just started attending here in the last couple of years. And for the rest of you who are family for a long time and participants, this will be a brief recap for you of how we got there. Malawi is landlocked in the southeast part of Africa, and it's on a Great Lake very similar to Lake Michigan. It actually has more water in it than Lake Michigan, and that's because it goes almost 2,000 feet deep. So it's a big lake. It just looks smaller on the surface. The size of Malawi is slightly smaller than Wisconsin, but they have triple the population. Many of the people you don't see because you have to go down footpaths and they're in the bush. So unless you're in the city, it does not feel nearly as populated as Wisconsin. And they're poor. And when I say poor, I mean poor. The current average annual income in Malawi is $350 a year. So they have a lot of struggles there. They live off the land. The other thing that we notice when we go over there is that we see quite a bit of spiritual darkness because there's a significant Muslim population. And in that part of the world, the Muslim or Islamic faith is very closely intertwined with witchcraft. And you see it everywhere. It's all around you when you go. In 2002, 3, and 4, Steve and I went to Malawi with World Relief to do some short-term missions. And it was while we were there that we met a man named Harrison Chinyama, who had volunteered to be Steve's interpreter at the time. So we got to know him and what he did on his own time. And we learned that he and a ministry team that he had put together were systematically evangelizing Malawi village by village. And when we met him, he'd actually already planted 100 churches throughout Malawi. So we knew, we were very impressed with this gentleman. He used the Jesus film, and once the churches were planted, he was also training the pastors. Now, after 2004, we stopped going. We didn't think we would be going back, but God reached us in 2006 and said, nope, contact Harrison. That's another story. Contact him and support him. And we didn't know what that meant. So we did get in touch with him, but he actually declined our help. He did not take the support initially because he said, you actually have to come here to see what we're doing. If you don't see it, you won't understand it, and he didn't think that the support would continue. So that's what we did. In 2008, we went on a vision trip to be with Harrison in Malawi. Now, just 3 weeks before we left to go there on that trip, we started attending Whitestone. And unknown to us, they had recently decided that they wanted to target a certain part of the world, Africa, but they didn't know where. And then, of course, there we were. Coincidence? I don't think so. God is amazing. So they prayed over us, and off we went. And when we got to Malawi, Steve and I were traveling with Harrison, and we traveled over 1,200 miles to see what he was doing and how he was reaching the people in the villages and planting churches. We also had the privilege of teaching 3 pastors' conference at Harrison's request. While we were there, Harrison was telling us about a dream that God had given him decades before, and that was to purchase a piece of land and build a building on it so that instead of having to go to one village at a time, he could bring in lots of pastors to one place, teach them all, and then they could radiate back out through the country and reach all of the villages. It was a much more efficient dream that he had. So as you can see in this picture here, that is on our trip in 2008. There's Harrison. We're driving down a footpath, as you can see, which was pretty common at that time. And he's pointing to the land that you see on your left. That is an area that he'd been looking at for a couple of years, and he felt that God wanted him to build there. And that was all owned by Muslims. We did end up purchasing that land, and it has now become the Bethel Training and Retreat Center. And that's where we've been going for the last several years. But you're seeing it before anything was built on it. Harrison's team also has formally become known, because they're now full-time, they are now the Timothy Harvest Ministries, and or THM. You're going to hear that a lot. And I'm repeating this just because so many people aren't even familiar with THM or Bethel, but it's a major ministry of this church to go over and train pastors. So from the years 2009 to 2018, all of the Whitestone pastors and several church members went with us to Malawi, and we put on conferences for the pastors and their wives over there with THM. At Bethel, and about 50 couples would come, 100 people, which meant that 50 villages were being impacted after every conference, instead of them traveling one village at a time. They received training on the Bible, because many of the pastors had not gone to school, and certainly not to college or seminary. We taught them what it meant to have a godly marriage, because of the differences in how people treat women in that part of the world. And we also introduced playtime in the form of Malawi Olympics, because couples typically never had fun together. And the Malawi Olympics were basically minute-to-win-it games outside, and they loved it. It was a time where they could laugh and play together, which they'd never experienced. We brought people over there to help teach on agriculture, since they typically lived off the land. We brought health specialists who could teach on HIV and other things. And we also started youth conferences because per Harrison, the youth are the future of Malawi, and he wants to reach them, get them started young to understand who Christ is. It's important that THM and the pastors also become self-sufficient financially, so they're not at the whims of the weather for floods and droughts. And so we introduced something called IGAs, Income Generating Activities. And that was very important. So you're going to hear more about that when Steve comes up. I want to thank you as a church, because over these years you have supported us with prayer, and also financially by supporting the conferences, giving the pastors Bibles, because even the pastors, they didn't have their own Bibles. You provided the food and the supplies. You sent our Whitestone teams across the world. And you are now also providing the THM staff with their salaries so they can continue to support this ministry and reach out through Malawi. You sent over 100 tents, which have housed the participants at the conferences, many of which need to be replaced. They've been used for so many years and out in the sun, but they're still in use. You sent water filters, which was critical because of the disease from bad water over there. And they now have learned how to make them, and they use these water filters as an evangelistic tool to reach the Muslim villages. You sent fabric for the ladies to make them feel special because they just dressed in rags. You raised money for chickens. You provided a large, I want to say it's a 14-seater van, which they probably put in 20 or 25 people crowded in. And you provided 2 huge work trucks so that they can transport even more people and gear. You assisted in building 8 buildings on this property. And you also sent over a block machine to help make blocks for the buildings. And the list goes on and on. So thank you very much for that. You are very important to this ministry. It's part of us here. Whitestone and THM are a partnership. They're our family, our friends, and they're our second Whitestone home. And we're going to continue to support them as they continue to reach the people of Malawi for Christ. We're in it to the rapture, I'm told by one of the elders, who will remain nameless. And I'd love to share more about what God is doing in Malawi, but I need to pass this off to Brian, who's going to share with you about the youth ministry. Mulungu akadalatseni, God bless you.
Thanks, Diane. So Diane had mentioned the youth conference that we started over there. It didn't start as smooth as you would expect in Africa, right? We were asked to start a Bible study probably about 10 years ago, and I think it was Steve Robley and I had went over there with all this fire and excitement to have all these kids, doing this Bible study under the Gyra tree, which is part of the THM logo there. And we were told there's going to be 20 to 30 kids, and when we got there, they were supposed to get there at 5 o'clock, not really thinking that they don't have watches. And so we were excited. We got there at 5, and there was no kids there. So we sat there throwing the football around, and eventually 1 or 2 showed up, and I think our first Bible study, I don't remember, Steve, there was probably like 3 or 4 kids showed up. So we had our little study and got to know them and stuff. And by the end of this first trip, I think it was about 3 weeks long, we had about 20 to 30 kids that we were doing Bible study with. And the youth over there are considered 15 to 30-year-olds. So if you're not married, up to 30, you're still considered a youth over there. And so we got a little more excited about it. We came back the next year, and I think we had probably about 60. And we'd play volleyball and do some fun things with them. But the goal was to teach the Word of God to these kids, a lot of them being Muslims. And the cool thing was to witness these Muslims accepting Christ and then going back to their villages and actually converting their whole villages, to Christianity, which was really, really awesome to see, which really just drove us to come back again every single year. Fast forwarding to, having the right people over there to lead things while you're not there is pretty difficult because communication isn't all that great, back and forth. And we were lucky enough to be paired up with a guy. He was a younger guy, up and coming, a lot of energy. His name was Tapiwa. I'll let you kind of do the first slide here first. That's what our conference looks like right now. So we went from 30 kids to about 230 kids coming to our youth conferences. But it all started with the next slide. Tapiwa. So he was kind of the young guy that we had identified as a really good leader over there, and the kids loved him. They played with him, but they also respected him, and he was really excited about the Lord. So we ended up sending him to seminary school, and then he's really was the big reason why the youth ministry over there just flourished. Unfortunately, about 1.5 years ago, he passed away of cancer, and you can go to the next slide. That's his wife, Jean. They have a 1-year-old. We were able to continue to support her after the fact, and get her, financially stable and get her into her own place again. But the cool thing was, is to see the church really rally around, rally around her and help support her. We had to jump through some hoops because of how they handle things culturally over there. But we were able to identify with Tepiwa over the years. Every time we would go there, we would identify new up-and-coming leaders, girls and boys, so we can kind of groom them to take over, roles there. And so, if you want to go to the next slide. This is Chief. I met him when he was, I think, maybe 8 or 10 around. And he really didn't speak any English, but I could tell he was really excited about the Lord. And so we kind of started to pour into him a little bit, to the point where he ended up going to seminary school. And he's now in the process of taking over what Tepiwa really had started over there. And so thankfully we have, these leaders that are really excited about the Lord, taking it on and continuing on the plan that's in place over there. But currently, like I said, we have about 230 kids that are coming to our youth conferences. So what we do is kind of similar to the couples conference. We put them out in tents, and we feed them. And then we always have a theme for the conference. And then we have multiple people over there that we're doing teaching. And then we go into breakout sessions and things like that. And really, that's where all the work happens, is in the breakout sessions. A lot of the Muslims are accepting Christ in their little breakout sessions, and then going back to their villages, just super excited. Sometimes they go back to their village and they get basically kicked out of their villages because they have accepted Christianity. So it gets a little tough over there for them. But there's a lot of exciting things. We haven't been there in a couple of years just because of COVID, which has been kind of tough. But this year they're actually having their first youth conference without us there, and they're going to have about 150 kids there. So, which is pretty awesome to see them self-sufficient and doing things without us actually being on site. But we're still supporting them with the conference financially and through prayer. So their plan this year for their youth conferences, there's 28 districts in Malawi, so it's kind of like a county here in Wisconsin. And so they're taking one leader from each district, and then that leader is actually bringing 6 youth from each district. So if you think of Wisconsin, around the same size, just a little bit bigger than Malawi, they're taking 6 kids from every little area of Malawi and then bringing them here, so then they can pretty much handle the whole country of Malawi, not just the surrounding area, which is really exciting. So if you do the math, there's going to be 26 districts with 6 kids coming. It's going to be a pretty huge ordeal there. But they definitely need prayer, because obviously these kids come, they learn, and then a lot of them get really excited about Jesus, and then they go back and they just get, pummeled by the enemy. So they will definitely need prayer. So we're planning on going back next year, hopefully, God willing, and having another conference there. But we are praying for this conference that they're having. I think it's September 11th, around there. So, which is coming up really quick. So if you guys have any questions on how you want to help with the youth conference, or if you have any questions, we got tons of stories on, just great stories of what has happened over there in the last few years. But I have 9 minutes, so I think I'm right on time here. So thank you, and I'm going to bring Steve up.
Yeah, 9 minutes, so buckle up. We're going to go fast. First of all, just to kind of get you up to speed, it's been 3 years since we've been back there. It's hard to believe. And so you begin to wonder, what's going on? What have they been doing? We haven't been there. We haven't been doing the conferences. Our support has still been with them. Let me tell you, it's going to blow you away what I'm about to show you. One fortunate thing is they were never really affected too badly by COVID. We had nobody actually get, sick, or anybody pass away that we know of, even amongst all the pastors that we've had at the conferences. So we were they were very blessed in that respect. And Harrison would always tell me, he says, we have no hospitals. There's like 4 ICU beds in the entire country. He said, all we have is God, and he's got to do it. And he did. So they have done a lot since 2019 on some self-sufficiency, which I will show you. And I know we moan and complain, and we should, about 9% inflation per year, per month in Malawi. It's gotten, the exchange rate has just been unbelievable. And just to go buy basic bread, to go in there one day and say you pay a quarter, then you go back and it's 35, then it's 45. Now it may be up to $1 for that same loaf of bread. It's been really hard on them. So your support is really helping them carry this through. What you see here is one of the buildings of the 8. It's this very substantial building. It's called Timothy Harvest, and this building is called His Place. His Place is a restaurant, meeting hall, kind of a multi-purpose kind of building. And I wish I could show you the rest of the buildings, but this is kind of the standard that they set. Before we get too much further, you should know the characters. So on the next slide, we see up on the top, this is the staff that you support. And it's either a husband with his wife there, or a wife who's on staff with a husband. You've got people that are doing the ministry, the teaching. You've got people that actually take care of the chickens, the gardens, and you have guards, because over there, if you don't put somebody on it, it walks off all by itself. So all these folks are supported through you. What you don't see is probably double that of the kids behind them. And so you're supporting the kids as well through this. On the right here, we have the man himself, Harrison Chinyama, and his wife, Memory. Harrison had a pretty exciting year. He finished up his seminary education and actually was awarded 2 PhDs from a university in India. So he's now Dr. Harrison Chinyama. I told him I'd never call him that, though. And then down below are 4 of his 5 girls. And they're all grown, either in, about to go in, or have graduated college. And he has always said his #1 priority in life is to make sure my girls are educated, because that's the key when you come from a poor country like that, is education. So let's blast through what's been going on. So what do they do in ministry-wise? Well, here's just a few of the things that they are doing on a continual basis. Up in the upper left, Change Me. It's special workshops for ladies on teaching them what it means to be a godly woman. And many of the ladies that are part of THM, they conduct those under Harrison's direction. Underneath, we have servants leading servants. This is keyed at the pastors, because in Malawi, pretty much the culture says, hey, if I'm a pastor, you owe me stuff. I'm the pastor, so, tithes and all that comes to me. Harrison says, no, that's not how you serve. Servants have to learn how to serve. So servants leading servants is teaching them to say, if you want to be the head of your flock, you need to be the best servant there. And so they have workshops on teaching them how to do that. And remember, most of these guys, they never went to seminary school. God just said, hey, I want you to minister to this group of people. And then THM comes along and empowers them to do that. Evangelism is always going on. When we got there, he had about 100 churches planted. Now there's over 400 churches that they've had some role in planting in the country of Malawi. Now, a lot of these are tiny little, meet under a tree churches, but nevertheless, it's changing lives. And then, of course, marriage seminars. Boy, when we got there, how men treated ladies was shocking, actually. And it was sort of, my wife paints the picture of, you want to know what it's like to be a married woman in there? You got some guy who's probably 10 or 20 years older than you, walking out in front. You got a bundle of straw on your head, a baby on your back, and that guy's going, let's move it. That was kind of the culture. Well, we started doing seminars, and the couples was focused on marriage. I can't tell you how it's changed. People, the couples, they actually love each other, and you can see it, and they show it, and it's just had an amazing ministry, and that's probably the one I'm the most fond of. Other ones that we do, godly man, there's also workshops for men. How do you be a godly man? And they conduct these workshops, and they can be as long as a week long. Doug's in here, I think, somewhere. He'd be glad to know that they're back to drip irrigation. We brought that over in 2010, and now is the time when they're going out and they're actually teaching people how to do that. And it's really important because the people over there, you have in sub-Saharan Africa, so you've got a wet season and a dry season, and there is no wet and dry and no dry and wet. So for 6 months of the year, there's no rain. So how do you feed your family with your garden and things like that? Drip irrigation, and one of my favorites, manure tea, is the answer. And they're starting to train more and more people how to do that. We got to get them some Home Depot buckets, so those yellow ones are kind of ugly. And then, of course, our main focus is the conferences. And what you see there is just a picture of people coming out after one of our meals, and up above, all the tents that you supplied so that they have a place to stay. Conferences run about 8 days, and they are in class from 8 in the morning, officially till 5, but usually till 8 o'clock at night. It's a long, long day, and we need multiple teachers. And the cool thing is, they didn't have a conference in 20, but they did in 21, and they taught it, and it was awesome. They did an unbelievably good job, and at the end of this month, end of September, they'll be holding their second without any of our influence at all, and I'll be happy to share once I get the results out of that. All right, one of the other things Diane talked about were, I think, is IGAs. So the next slide, income generating activities. We always knew that they can't be a donor state forever. There are things we need to do, and there are things that we're going to continue to do for some time, but there are some exciting things happening in regards to that. Fortunately, here in the U.S., we figure we'll go, hey, we'll teach you how to do drip irrigation. How many thousand of them you got out there? Well, that's kind of an American thing, and it doesn't how it works in Africa. It takes a while because they don't like to change. Some of the income generating activities that we have on the top, the biggest one was chickens. You see the little guys running around. That's one of 2 barns that we house, and we can house up to 3,000 chickens. Fortunately, in 2020, we had a virus, I guess it was, go through and kill a lot of the chickens, and it probably would have killed them all. So THM decided, hey, let's not let that happen while the birds are still healthy. We'll slaughter them and we'll sell it. Fortunate for us, it was during Ramadan, which is one of the high holy times in the Muslim faith. And if you know anything about Ramadan, they have to fast all day long, and then they get to eat at night. You have no idea how those chickens flew off the shelf when they were hungry. And they were able to sell them, make enough money that now what you see up there is the beginning of the next generation of chickens. Down below, you heard about a block machine. I don't have a picture of it, but you see a pile of dirt. Well, the pile of dirt is significant because in Malawi, in order to make building materials, which are brick, they have molds. And if you look at the bottom of the mold, it says, made by the Moses Brick Building Company, because that's how they do it, just like Moses did. Then they build an oven, then they fire it with half a woods full of trees, and then you get hard bricks that'll hold up the rain and won't crumble to nothing. The government has come in and said, you've deforested this country. You can't do that anymore. So what are they going to use for building materials? Time is right for the block machine. In fact, they have been approached by some large companies in the cities, and some of the people that are going to try to convert or bring back safaris to Malawi, and they're coming in and said, hey, we need 5,000 blocks. We need 10,000 blocks. When can we get them? That's amazing. The problem that we have is that we want to make sure they have enough spare parts so that, because this is a very wearable machine, a lot of things wear out. We got to make sure they got spare parts so they don't have to stop production. So we're in the process right now of trying to equip them so that they can go, and Harrison's also looking for people over there that can work on these machines and actually make parts for them. They're also putting in 2 campgrounds. And they're finding that people are discovering what's been going on at Bethel. They see the buildings, they see the facility, and they're coming in and they're actually renting out the buildings for as much as a week. About a month ago, we had a church go in there. 100 people came for a week to do their church meeting. And starting next year, they're going to also be providing all their meals for a fee, and we'll use that building you saw earlier, the restaurant, in order to do that. So the retreat center is now coming into fruition. Next slide. Also, they do IGAs on growing food. Top 2 are just some areas that they have for gardening, and they're actually in the middle of a pilot project for Irish potatoes in Malawi, but they love them. And so they're doing that, and they'll be selling those. The garden down here, and here's a neat one, the bananas. They planted 720 banana trees, and in 2 years, they're already harvesting the bananas. So that's going to bring a huge amount of income to them as well. I don't know if we have another slide, or is that the last one? Oh, then this is where we are this year. Thanks to you, we've already been able to cover the youth conference that Brian talked about, but we're still short some money for the couples conference. And if God puts it on your heart to support this, you can just, put in a check or whatever and just say, couples conference, Malawi, Africa. But the work is going on, and they're doing an amazing job. Sometimes we think, well, they can't really do it without our help. No, they're doing it with the one who really does help them, and that's God. We're here to assist, maybe point them in a certain direction, but overall, it's God that's doing the supplying, and you, as people that have supported this. When I talked to Harrison last week, on what we're doing, they're praying for us right now as we make our presentation. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 5 o'clock in the afternoon over there, and they're gathered and they're praying that this all goes well. And he wanted me to tell you, Zikomo Kwambiri, which means thank you very much. And now, for your listening enjoyment, straight from the Caribbean, our local reggae band.
Yeah, man. Could you all please rise? We're going to worship the Lord together. The splendor of the King, clothed in majesty, let all the earth rejoice, all the earth rejoice. He wraps himself in light, his eyes too high. It trembles at his voice, trembles at his voice. How great is our God? Sing with me, how great is our God? And oh, we'll see how great is our God. Age to age he stands, and time is in his hand, beginning and the end, beginning and the end. The Godhead three in one, Father, Spirit, Son, the Lion and the Lamb, Lion and the Lamb. How great is our God? Sing with me, how great is our God? And oh, we'll see how great is our God. great is our God. Sing with me, how great is our God. And oh, we'll see how great is our God. Yeah, man. You all could have a seat, please. Thanks.
Thanks, guys. You make me homesick. Well, good morning, White Stone family, including the ones that we are normally a part of, the online family, because we serve in Jamaica. My name is Greg Campbell. My wife, Rebecca, is down here. She's going to come up in a minute. She didn't want to stand alongside me at the beginning because she says, I don't know what to do with my face while I'm standing there. So she'll be up in a minute. But as I said, we serve in Jamaica. We serve in the parish of St. Thomas in a small village known as Botany Bay, which is where our office is. But we started to serve the entire parish of St. Thomas. How did we get involved down there? Well, about 30 years ago, we started working with a missionary that was down there who had the desire to build a school because the kids weren't going to school. So we thought, well, let's bring the school to the kids. So for about 8 years straight, we spent our summer vacations, and why we went to Jamaica in the summer, I don't know, but helping to organize and build this school. So this is a picture of us. The missionary that we were working with she ended up with an inoperable brain tumor, came home, and she gave us a call from Colorado and said, I'm dying, and God told me you're taking over the ministry. Well, that's kind of a strange way to get a call, but we said, I think that if we're really called to Jamaica, I think he'll tell us too. Well, he did. He fast-tracked us. We put her house on the market, things sold, and she died in May, and we were in Jamaica by August of that year. So we opened the school and spent a year there, and we put it into the hands of a program called Latin American Child Care, which got sponsorships for the kids and brought teams down to continue to do the building. So we went for a visit about 8 years ago, just to see how things were going. And that was what the school looked like when we got there. Obviously, it changed a lot. And while we were there, we attended a church service with all of what were kids when we were there are now young adults. Some of them very successful, but there was a group of them that was kind of falling through the cracks. They were young women that had several children, probably from several men, had no way to support themselves. They were getting up in church and giving testimonies about, I'm relying upon God to help me. And so we went back to our air-conditioned hotel, and God began to speak to our hearts and said, I think you need to go help them. You're not done down there yet, even though you've been absent for almost 25 years. So the first item that we decided we were going to do to help them was open the Seaglass boutique. And this is a cook shop that we rent. And we had several teams come down. You can see it's in pretty bad shape. And this is okay, you are one ahead yet in the back. Okay. So go ahead. This is the boutique finished. Several teams come down, we reworked the whole thing, and then we started to send our donations down and to get ready to open. While we were getting ready to open, we had several people come down to begin to train in what we call cottage industries. So they were teaching painting and jewelry making, and if you visit our table, you're going to see some of the painting items that they did. And what we would do is send those out someplace, have them sold, and the money would come back to them. We got things together, got our shipment down there, and we had our grand opening. And this is our grand opening. It was a big hit. They got a lot of good quality clothing for almost nothing. And so it was a meeting place. It was a spot for the women to receive some hope and to get some nice clothes and know that they could leave the village and go to work. The other part is we got to hire some women to run the boutique, and part of their salary included a scholarship to go to school. And this is the first scholarship that we gave out. She graduated nursing school, so the boutique was doing what it needed to do. We also started a program, a community library. And this is the community center in Botany Bay, right across the square from our boutique. So this kind of became the center of our ministry. And so you had a team come down, and we had shipped dozens and dozens and dozens of boxes of books, and they went through them all and set up the library. This next slide is a young man who's very happy that we have a reading program or a library for him. The Homework Center is, after COVID, they're getting back to school and they're way behind. And so we decided we were gonna partner with another ministry, and we put internet into the center and things so that they have a spot to come and they get some help and they can get on the internet to do research, things like that. The other thing we did is there's a lot of elderly that seem to be hidden back in the bush. And then there's a lot of troubled families that have a hard time taking care of themselves. So what we do is we provide a hot meal to the elderly, and we're currently serving about 10, and they get that every day. And also there's some families that are in distress, and we give grants to the local shops, so we support the local shops, and they get a little bit of credit to help them buy groceries to sustain their families. So we're running along in our ministry, and all of a sudden God took a different direction with us. And that's where my wife's gonna come up and tell you the story of hope. Here she is with her face. And she looks
Here's my face. I know what to do with it right now. I want to talk to you about hope. There she is. We're in our 60s, and God surprised us with a little bundle. She was abandoned at the hospital, and someone asked if we could take her. And without even asking him, I said yes. And we took little Hope in, and she was the delight of our lives and so precious to us. She was with us for 6 months before the state came in and said that she needed to go to an orphanage, and that's Hope in the Orphanage. You can see the difference between her smiling face at our house and the little desperate face in the orphanage there in Jamaica. That orphanage was in Kingston. And anyway, that broke our heart, and seeing her in that place. But anyway, it was also the catalyst and the calling to do better for the children in Jamaica. And you can go ahead. We started Hope's House. One day I was walking down this a lane in Botany Bay and saw this home, and it was in terrible condition, but God sent us some teams to come down and fix it. And you can see the difference between what it was and what God has made it for the children in our new children's home called Hope's House. It's absolutely incredible and beautiful, and there's nothing like it in Jamaica. This is it. They've decided to use our Hope's House as the, what do you call it? The model. The model of what they want children's homes to look like. So brand new bathroom for the babies, keep going. Yeah, this is what it looks like now. It's unbelievable how beautiful it is and how much the children love it. Anyway, Hope's House, oh, this is the women. These are the women. Remember when God called us to minister to the women in Jamaica? And we were kind of like, oh, okay, what do we do? And we are now, we have hired 15 women in our village to run Hope's House. And there they are excited, they're happy to have a job. They support their own families now, and they love our children. They're wonderful women, so we're glad to have them. Hope's House opened last year, December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas. We got our first 5 children. We now have 9 children, and they acclimated very quickly. I mean, from what they were coming from to this home was wonderful for them. A church gave us last year a van to take them around, and I just want you to notice their faces. Remember Hope's face? This was our goal all along. They're happy, they're healthy, even though their background was abandoned and abused. Look what God's done, and brought joy and hope to their little lives. And so our van takes us to the park, it takes us to the seaside, and they are just delighted. And this lady here, God gave us, she is the manager of Hope's House, and she's a wonderful woman, and we thank God we want to thank all of you for how you have helped with Hope's House. You sent teams, you sent money. We are just so grateful to you, and we love you very much. Thank you.
So when she told you that Hope appeared at her house, I wasn't even in country. I received a phone call that said, guess what followed me home? But anyways, she was the love of our life. So how has Whitestone helped us? A lot of you don't realize that we've been involved with a lot of people here in the body, and you've actually done a lot to help us at this point. The first team that came down was a couple of Decembers ago or Novembers ago, and at that time, Hope's House wasn't open, so they were doing things like we were doing, visiting shut-ins, visiting the elderly, and those kinds of things. One of the elderly that we had, Mr. Brown, was terminal, and so we built a house for him, or you guys built a house. And so he got to finish his final days in a house that we had hired a couple women to come in and watch over him and take care of him. You also, we saw this picture earlier, they were responsible for unpacking all of the books and sorting them and organizing them by type, that kind of thing. The other thing you did was you were monumental in starting what we referred to as virtual mission trips. The country was shut down, you couldn't come in, you couldn't go out. Matter of fact, the airports were shut down for almost 6 months for non-essential, but we had needs that needed to be met, and one of those was we called the Bruce House. This family, there was a family of 7 that was living in one room, and there was 2 teenage girls. This doesn't work because they're sleeping with their little brother. So what you did is you provided the materials to build this addition and give those girls their own room and put a permanent kitchen in there. And we were able to hire a group of men to put that up. And the other thing you did was, in opening Hope's House, we had a final inspection done, and there was some things that needed to be repaired. One of them was a fence, and you provided the money for us to repair that fence and bring things up to standard. The surprise that we had was we originally designed Hope's House to be for infants, just like our little Hope was. And so we had 3 bedrooms full of cribs, set up to take in 10 kids. And when we got back on the island last year, they informed us that they didn't want to give us any infants. They were going a different route. They want them to go into foster care. Would we be interested in taking 4 to 7-year-olds? What were we going to say? Of course we will. But now we had a problem. We can't put a 4-year-old into a crib. So you gave us the materials and sent down a team to build beds 2 weeks before we opened Hope's House. And prior to opening, so each one of these rooms now has a twin bed and a trundle underneath it, and some of them have youth beds in there also, but we're set up now for 10, and we're almost at capacity. We got another little boy this week, so we're at 9. Also, while the team was down there building the beds, the ladies helped put finishing touches on Hope's House, and that was organize our drug cabinet, build these cabinets that went in each one of the rooms so the kids that arrived by us had their own shelf in this cabinet, had their own place, their own bed. So finishing touches were all done. The other thing we did, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit later, but we took them to visit what we're calling Hope's House 2. When we got ready to open, we met a Jamaican man who find out is very wealthy and owns a lot of land. He came to us, he asked us to come to his house, and he wanted to know what we were doing. And we said, we're building an orphanage out here in St. Thomas because there isn't one. And he said, well, if you're interested in growing any bigger, I've got some land that I will give you. Well, they visited the land with us, and you can kind of see over their background. This is 5 acres of prime real estate. I mean, it's got a view of the sea. There's always a breeze there. It overlooks the capital city of St. Thomas, Morant Bay. And so they helped us look over the survey and talk about plans for the future. The next project you guys did, this was presented to you last year, and you guys got a chance to meet Philip. And I know that they presented it that way. Philip's an elderly man who has very bad asthma. And until he got better and had a machine and had a safe place to go, they weren't even going to let him out of the hospital. That's how bad his asthma was. So he was bounced around from place to place, and we decided that he needed to have his own spot. And that's what they presented to you. So we were able to purchase materials and build an addition on Philip's house. And that's a picture of Philip's house going up. Also in that purchasing materials, we were able to paint and have it all ready for him to move in. We bought appliances, new stove, cooktop, refrigerator, new bed, dishes, put his own closet in there for him to put his things away, nightstand, lamps, everything you can think of to make this a very comfortable little home for him. Well, this is a picture of Happy Philip moved in. But we want to play a video of us interviewing him a few days after he got into his own house.
You told me that this, how did you put that? You said you feel free.
Yes, happy when I've done this.
Free and he's at peace.
Peace, yeah?
Mm-hmm. To have your own place
Yes,
finally?
I don't have anything to consider about.
Right. You don't have to think about anybody
No,
else.
no.
This is
No,
your spot.
Sometimes they say to me that we cannot burn the light the whole night, and it's paying for.
And you're paying for it.
Paying for it.
But they said you can't do
You
it.
can't do it, right?
Yeah. Now you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not me paying for it, but my daughter paying for it. Just
Yes.
like I was paying for it up there.
Yes, yes. Well, that's nice. And I love that closet. Isn't
Yeah.
that nice to have
It is
some place to
it's
put?
very nice.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's very nice.
yeah.
I have something to put in my clothes. I never yet have this opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Having these things that you brought for me.
Yeah.
No.
And what made me smile the other day was seeing you already planted a flower outside your house.
As I love flowers.
Yes.
And I love to plant. So if I live at a place and I cannot plant, I'm not feeling happy.
Right.
I love to plant something that's I love give some, I love to give, you know. I love to give people things.
Oh, so you're gonna grow some food or something for other people?
If I want need a melon, a pumpkin, or some bean, or some gungo peas, I pick it up, I can give it to her. Give it to them.
Yeah.
And that's what I do.
So did you get your beans planted?
Yeah, we got beans.
Okay.
And we go and look okra seed. No to plant.
Okay.
A cocoa seed?
Okra, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, it sounds like you're really making yourself at home here.
Okay. That's even my daughter called me and saying, you that me doing a nice farming.
Yeah.
Because they're not looking so me could be able to manage it, you know.
But you can manage
But
it,
every
right?
time I manage it.
Yes, yes.
You know what to eat.
I don't know if you noticed the one line. If he can't plant, he's not happy. But so he's very happy. He's got a little farm going in his yard. Again, because of your generosity in doing that project, you gave over and above what was needed in order to build Philip's house. So we joined it with some other designated money, and we added a patio cover. It's actually 15 by 40, and it covers the entire back of the house, because a lot of the things that we do at Hope's house are outside. So that helped us to do that. So future vision, where are we going from here? And we talked a little bit earlier about Hope's House Phase 2, and this next slide is a survey of what the land looks like. And again, it's just under 5 acres. And what we did is we hired a company to come in and do some clearing of the land so we could have an architect come in and look at it. And he gave us an architectural rendition of the first building. And we're finding out that it's probably not going to get okayed, so we're going to cut it in half, take the top floor off, and go from there. So how can you continue to help us? You've been so generous already. One of the things that you can do is pray for us. We, just like Malawi is a dangerous place or a dark place because of the Muslims, Jamaica, believe it or not, is very, very dark. We have the same kind of things that go on there. And we're on a part of the island that doesn't see the tourists. They're not out hustling. They're just trying to survive. And so we need you to pray that as we continue to go forward, that the darkness is held back. You can also help us by donating. You already do. There's a collection bin outside the front door that you can drop used clothing in and household goods, and that's how we put merchandise into our boutique. You can also help us with financial support. Obviously, everything we do does cost money. With Hope's House growing to capacity right away, we need some additional monthly support to cover the expenses there. We need monthly support for Seaglass in general to run all the programs that we talked about. We also, we're required to send the kids, once they become 3 years old, they start into public school. We don't want them to go to public school. We've contacted and we've got applications to send them to a private Christian school, but that's going to cost about $400 to $500 a kid per year to get them the uniforms and everything necessary to go. The other thing is all these donations that we collect and send down, they got to be shipped by truck and then by boat. And our last shipment was 5 pallets. It looks like this year we're going to have 4. And with the increase in fuel costs and things, it used to be about $750 a pallet. It's probably going to be $1,000 a pallet. So we need about $4,000 to make that shipment go. The other 2 things you can do is volunteer, either for outreach, and with COVID opening up, we already have purchased and shipped down a tent. We've got a new sound system, and we're looking to get a permit, set it up in the park in Morant Bay, and have a week or 2 of crusades and outreaches to reach that the area of St. Thomas. You can also volunteer for projects. And these projects are things like what you've already been involved in, putting a kitchen on somebody's house, those kinds of things. Steve and Gretchen Robley will be kind of our point people, so keep an eye out or an ear for some things that'll be starting probably this fall. All the time that we've been serving in Jamaica, we've always asked God to give us a view of the people that we're ministering to according to his eyes and according to his heart. Sometimes that's a hard thing to do because we think, I heard somebody say, God's not American, or Jesus isn't American. Jesus is all things to all people, so he ministers in their cultures. So we need to open our eyes to what's around us, and we've got a video to close that out.
Open your eyes to the world all around you. Open your eyes, open your eyes. This world is much more than the things that surround you. You must arise and open your eyes. Sometimes we're too busy to share, but Jesus wants us to care, to care. Open your arms to the naked and shivering. Open your arms, open your arms. We need a little less taking, a whole lot more giving. We're so safe and warm, we can open our arms and love a little bit stronger and pray a little bit longer, longer. Oh, Jesus says when we love someone in his name, we're loving him. Jesus says when we touch someone in his name, we're touching him. And we need to show them the light. We've got to pour out our lives, our lives. Open your hearts to the ones who are desperate. Open your hearts, open your hearts. They may never repay you, but their souls are worth it. New life you impart when you open your heart. Jesus loves all men the same, so we've got to go out in his name, his name. Listen, oh, Jesus says when we touch someone in his name, we're touching him. Jesus says when we love someone in his name, we're loving him. Oh yeah. Jesus says when we feed someone in his name, we're feeding him. And Jesus says when we reach someone in his name, he feels it, he says it's all for him. It's all for him. Open your eyes to the world all around you. Open your eyes, open your eyes. This world is much more than the things that surround you. Open your eyes, open your eyes. Jesus loves all men the same, so we've got to go out in his name, his name. Oh, Jesus says, Jesus says, Jesus says it's him. Oh, Jesus says when we love someone in his name, we're loving him. We're loving him.
on behalf of Seaglass Ministries and the people of Jamaica, on behalf of Timothy Harvest Ministries and the people of Malawi, we want to thank you for allowing us to share what's going on in other parts of the world. So, Father, I'm just thankful today that you saw fit to die for us. And Lord, that you've called us to go and reach another people group in another country, in a different culture. So all these things that were shared today, there was so much information. We just ask that you touch hearts, that you speak to hearts. Lord, as far as financing for Malawi for the conferences to continue, as far as financing and prayer support for both these ministries. We just ask again for your blessing as these ministries continue. In your name we pray, amen. Visit us out in the coffee shop. We've got a table set up out there. We'll answer some other questions for you. We've got a list of specific prayer needs for Jamaica, and look forward to talking to you back there. Thank you.
Of deliverance from my enemies, till all my fears are cold. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child